Back in 2025, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan it erupted into flames. It's a story of brand new conflicts piling right on top of 100 years of bad blood. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what happened, why it all went down, and what could possibly come next.
So, it all kicked off in October 2025. And look, this wasn't just another border skirmish. We are talking about the most intense fighting these two countries had seen in years, especially since the Taliban took back power. Things spiraled out of control fast, leading to closed borders and putting the entire region on red alert.
So you have to ask, what was the actual spark? What was the one thing that finally lit the fuse on this powder keg?
Well, it started with a big, aggressive move from Pakistan. Islamabad said its patience had run out. They launched airstrikes deep inside Afghanistan, aiming for leaders of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP. Now, you can imagine, the Taliban government saw this as a massive violation of their sovereignty, and they hit back, hard. They attacked Pakistani border posts, and that tit-for-tat is what turned all that simmering tension into a hot war.
But here's the thing. Those airstrikes, they didn't just come out of nowhere. To really get why Pakistan did something so drastic, we've got to look at what was happening inside their own country for the year leading up to this. And to put it lightly, things were going downhill fast.
I mean, just look at this number, 70%. In 2024 alone, Pakistan saw a 70% jump in terrorist attacks. That's not a gradual rise. That is an absolute explosion of violence. And it put unbelievable pressure on the government in Islamabad.
And all that violence had a devastating real-world cost. Those attacks in 2024 took 852 lives inside Pakistan. When you see a number like that, you start to understand the feeling in the capital. This sense that the country was under siege and that the problem was coming from right across the border.
And this chart, wow, it tells you everything you need to know about who was being targeted. That giant bar, the tallest one by a mile, that's attacks on security forces, more than 300 of them. This wasn't random chaos. It was a direct, focused campaign against the Pakistani state itself. And when your own army and police are the #1 target, your whole security calculation changes.
And just so you know, this isn't just speculation. The data we're looking at comes from a major security report by the Pak Institute for Peace Studies. This is the hard evidence that was shaping Pakistan's tough new stance. But really, this recent fire is just burning on top of some very old, very dry wood.
You see, this conflict isn't really about what happened last year. Its roots go way deeper, back to a border dispute that's over 100 years old, a line drawn by a colonial power right through the heart of a people.
Okay, this timeline is just so crucial to understanding everything. It all starts in 1893. The British draw the Durand Line, and it literally splits the Pashtun homeland in two. Fast forward to 1947, Pakistan inherits this border, but Afghanistan is like, nope, we never agreed to that. They've never officially recognized it. That one disagreement has poisoned things ever since. Then, in a strange twist, Pakistan actually backed the first Taliban regime in the 90s, but even when their old allies returned to power in 2021, it wasn't enough to fix the fundamental problem. All those old wounds just opened right back up.
All right, so if you think it's complicated already, just hold on. To really get a grip on this, we need to untangle this messy web of militant groups, governments, and international players, because everybody has their own agenda.
So first up, the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban. For Islamabad, these guys are public enemy #1. They want to overthrow the government, and Pakistan is convinced that their leaders are hiding out in Afghanistan. The Afghan Taliban, for their part, constantly deny it. That argument right there is at the absolute heart of the conflict.
Then, just to stir the pot, you've got the Blah. They're fighting a totally different battle. They're Baluch separatists who want to carve out their own independent country. Their attacks on Pakistani soldiers, and interestingly, Chinese projects, just add another massive layer of instability to the whole situation.
And just when you think you have it all figured out, in walks ISKP, the local branch of ISIS. And get this, they are sworn enemies of both the Taliban and Pakistan. So what you have is this bizarre, multi-sided conflict where governments are fighting extremist groups who are also fighting each other. It's a mess.
This table lays it all out pretty clearly. Just look at those top two rows. Pakistan's goal is to get the TTP. The Taliban's goal is to assert their sovereignty, which means denying the TTP is even there. Their core objectives are in direct opposition. And meanwhile, you have all these other powers,
China trying to protect its investments, India trying to gain some influence, the US watching nervously from a distance. Everybody has a stake, but they're all pulling in different directions.
You know, it's so easy to get lost in the geopolitics and the military strategy, but we have to remember who's really caught in the middle of all this. The human cost, especially for the millions of Afghan refugees in Pakistan, has been absolutely catastrophic.
This quote from Human Rights Watch just hits so hard. A coercive environment. What they're saying is that this wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate policy to make life so unbearable for Afghans that they'd be forced to go back to a country that's already facing its own nightmare.
And the scale of this is just hard to wrap your head around. Amid this crisis, Pakistan moved to close refugee camps, putting as many as 2 million people at risk. Many of these people were born in Pakistan, it's the only home they've ever known, and they were suddenly at risk of losing everything.
And the most immediate impact of the fighting? The borders slammed shut. Crossings that are absolute lifelines for trade and people were sealed. It didn't just stop fighters, it stranded families, it stopped trucks full of food and medicine, and it choked off the main artery into a landlocked country, making a terrible situation so much worse.
So, that brings us to today. There's a very fragile ceasefire in place, but the whole region is balanced on a knife's edge. And the big question everyone's asking is, where do we go from here?
Really, when you boil it all down, there are two possible paths forward. First is the escalation scenario, a real nightmare. The ceasefire collapses, another attack happens, Pakistan retaliates even harder, and we could be looking at a full-scale border war. The other path is de-escalation. The truce holds, mediators step in, maybe a deal is made. But even in that best-case scenario, the deep, deep mistrust that caused all this, it's not going anywhere. It's still simmering right below the surface. And that leaves us with this one final massive question. Is it possible for diplomacy to actually cool down a conflict that's been burning for 100 years? Or did we just witness the start of a brand new, devastating forever war on this incredibly troubled frontier?